Man, I love that theme music. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Between Two Brands podcast. I am your host, Bill Petrie. And again, I love that theme music. Thank you, Jason Noakes from Promo Pulse, for rocking it out for me. It's pretty awesome, and I really dig it. Today, we've got a great show for you. But before we get to it, let me thank our sponsor today, and that's Bell Promo. And before I read the sponsor read, I got to put on my spectacles. Hey, folks, there's so much good coming out of Bell Promo these days. Here's just a few things. Lowest minimums in the industry? Yeah, you can Bell Promo that. Deepest inventory around? Yeah, you can Bell Promo that too. 5-star and A+ service? Well, you're darn tootin'. You can Bell Promo that. Simplified pricing? Damn right you can Bell Promo that. And if that weren't enough, and gosh darn it, it should be, then the good folks at Bell Promo have announced during Expo last week that they are offering 2-day production on a huge section of their products. That's amazing. Frankly, I love that, but I think I should stay on brand here. 2-day production? Absolutely. You can Bell Promo that. So head over to bellpromo.com to learn more about the new 2-day production on most products and feel confident that when your client asks you to create branded merchandise that's available with low minimums and 2-day production, you can tell them, yeah, you can Bell Promo that. All right. Thank you for tuning in again. For those of you who did, I got to tell you, I was blown away by the response this podcast had last week for episode 1. Thank you to Nick Latour from Merch AI for being the first guest. He was fantastic. But I was overwhelmed with the amount of comments publicly, comments privately, and the sheer number of people who watched and listened, which really blew me away. So I'd be remiss if I didn't thank everybody for that. Today, I thought for the section that I'm going to do before I bring our guest on is talk about Expo last week. It seems like a good natural thing to do, and frankly, it's a good way to fill time. So let's do that. I got there early. I think a lot of people know that. I ended up going Thursday before Expo because we were supposed to get a huge snowstorm here in Nashville that kind of didn't happen. So got some snow, but my flight on Saturday, where I was originally booked, would have gone on time. And through a series of comedic delays and all sorts of things I'm not going to get into, I didn't get into Vegas until about 3:30 Friday morning, which kind of starts off the week, which is already a really long, brutal, challenging week. Doesn't start it off too well. So suffice to say, I spent most of the day Friday ensconced in my bed napping, which was great because it set me up for a good week. What I enjoyed about being there that early was a really nice opportunity to spend some time with some people that usually it's rushed. You're running between this meeting and that meeting and the show floor and wherever everybody's going to, and it's usually a lot of the hi, how you doing? I was able actually to spend some quality time with some people, and I really enjoyed that. It's something that I'm not usually afforded during the week of Expo, and I'm sure you all can agree. Because I did come in early, I had to get another reservation, so I did the dreaded hotel shuffle. I had to leave one hotel room and go to another one on Sunday. Worst things in the world could happen, that's for sure, but there's nothing worse than living out of a suitcase for 48 to 72 hours and not really packing it up, but kind of packing it up and schlepping it across the show or the casino to the other hotel. So that was it. I thought I'd share, though, what I thought the best things were about Expo and maybe the things I didn't love about Expo, at least my experience with it. So let's talk about the best things. Conference Day. Conference Day was amazing. Conference Day used to be called Education Day by PPAI, and that's the Monday before the show floor opens on Tuesday. I don't think I've ever seen a buzz around Education Day, Conference Day, than I saw a week ago last Monday. Truly phenomenal. Not only just the sheer amount of people, the quality of the speakers, to the point where I know in the room I was in, I was blessed to have I think about 400 people in the room, and they didn't allow like 50 people in who wanted to get in. Like the fire marshal's like, can't go in. That happened in other people's rooms as well. It wasn't just me. So I'm not pumping up my own ego here, but it happened consistently. For if you weren't there on time, there was a good chance you were going to miss out on whatever education session you wanted to attend. That's kind of a testament of the great job that the professional development team over at PPAI did in curating intentional education sessions that people were not only excited about attending, but were also able to take something away from. So I thought that was really cool. Seeing Drew Holmgreen, met him a few times. I was able to meet him first at the PPEF, the Promotional Products Education Board meeting on Sunday, and spent a little time with him. But I was able to see him throughout the week, and I don't know if he has a twin, maybe a triplet, but he was everywhere and really doing what I thought was a tremendous job getting involved, reaching out to people, and engaging membership. I'm sure it was a challenging week for Drew, certainly an exhausting one, but I thought he did a really nice job of being everywhere at the same time. Seemed like it. He was going from place to place and meeting people to people, and I thought that was truly, truly phenomenal. The energy of the show was up more than I've seen it in a long time, maybe before COVID. Truly, it was amazing that the energy on the show floor. I didn't spend a lot of time on the show floor, as I rarely do. I'm usually running from meeting to meeting. When I was on the show floor, however, it was very clear that suppliers were very pleased with the amount of people, but more importantly, the quality of the conversations they were having. And every supplier I spoke to during and after the show, as well as all my distributor friends I spoke to during and after the show, felt that there was a really positive, high energy vibe there. And I love that. Um, networking is always great at Expo. I probably could blather on here, but why do that? We all know that it's family-based networking, but the best thing, it's the people. I am sure other industries mirror ours in terms of that giant gathering, the Super Bowl, the promotional products year. It really is a family reunion. And to see people that I don't normally see on an annual basis, that I get to have a hug, a handshake, a quick conversation, or even maybe a little deeper, maybe more meaningful conversation, maybe an intentional conversation. I value that so much. And it just underscores the real value of the promotional products business. It's not the merchandise, it's the people. I love that. But you know what? With the good, there's always some things that maybe we would like to see improved. Number one, damn, shit's expensive out there. A bottle of water for 5.75. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing PPAI can do about it. But man, Vegas has gotten stupid, stupid expensive. I'm looking at my notes here. Here's a note. I hate Vegas. I really do. I now equate Vegas to a 3-day city. I can get there, do everything I want to do, and get out in 3 days and feel like I've done everything I wanted to do. So in that sense, it's kind of like San Antonio. I can get San Antonio, do everything I want in 3 days and get out. Anything more than 3 days, all I want to do is leave. So the fact that I went early on Thursday and stayed until the following Thursday and therefore there an entire week, that was a little rough. Um, does anyone like the Mandalay Bay elevator bank at peak times? It seemed worse this year. Now, maybe it was because the attendance of the show was up. I don't know, but I spent an inordinate amount of time either on the floor I was on or at the bottom floor waiting to go up to my floor, waiting on elevators, and just seemed really, really more crushing than usual. Not only physically crushing, but also soul crushing. That walkway between where you get the Starbucks and you get to the Shark Reef or the Border Grill, that sunlight in the morning is absolutely blinding. People who know me know I call that little section walkway God's flashlight, judging you for the things you've done the night before, and it absolutely is. It is the brightest light on the surface of this planet. Some curtains would be nice that could be drawn. That would be nice, Mandalay Bay. Maybe some curtains. So for those of us who maybe had a few too many networking events the night before, if you know what I'm saying, curtains would be nice. Had some weird interactions with people. We don't talk about those things. I'm not going to get into specific names, but had some certain weird interactions. There were, a couple, I don't know, frenemies, I guess you could say. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and nobody's everybody's cup of tea. If you're trying to be everybody's cup of tea, trust me, you're nobody's cup of tea. But there are a couple people who I could see specifically avoiding me, and that's okay. It just creates a little weirdness. And then I did go up to someone where there has been a strained relationship, and I'm not really clear why there is a strained relationship. And I went up to this person and said, "Hey, I'm tired of the weirdness. I don't know what I've done, but I'd love to bury the hatchet. I'd love to, figure out and move on because I like you and I applaud what you've done. I'm proud of what you've done. It's amazing." And that was met with a shrug of the shoulders and a hmm. And so that was weird and kind of disappointing, but it happens. But I wouldn't be me if I didn't share something like that. So there I did. Um, the Vegas airport. I That is the saddest place on earth. Now, maybe it's because I fly out of the Southwest terminal because I want a direct flight, but the people who are jonesing and have to gamble up until the second they board, I don't know why that strikes me as sad, but man, it does. Plus, it's after being on all week, after talking every time you turn around, it's a quiet place, and so I don't know if you're like me. You're kind of like, I hope nobody notices me. I hope there's not a lot of people on my flight. I know I'm ready to start decompressing, and so that is when I get to the airport. I'm on guard, kind of looking around and ready to get home. And I think the last thing that kind of I didn't love about the whole week is afterwards. There was a couple posts on the promotional products professionals page complaining about things, and to me, it falls under the category of people continually looking for reasons to be aggrieved. One of the ones that really stuck out at me was there's a welcome sign and on the other side a goodbye sign that PPAI puts up in every possible language. And of course, someone didn't like the way something was spelled or the meaning was slightly different. It meant farewell instead of goodbye. And it drives me nuts. And it just falls under the category of people aren't happy unless they're a little bit unhappy. People love to have an axe to grind rather than looking at the intent of what PPI is doing, which is trying to make everybody who is from whatever faith, whatever region of the world, whatever language, whatever country, making them feel as welcome as possible in the intent there, trying to make people feel inclusive. People have to nitpick the little bit that might not be exactly perfect, and they can't just send that to PPAI and say, "Hey, let me help you here. I'd like to correct this might be better for next year." They have to air their grievances in a public forum, which tends to make people feel like shit. And that drives me completely bananas. It's not effective, certainly. And what you end up doing is I think the intent there is good. You want to say, "Hey, PPAI, could you change this, change that?" But instead of directing it to PPAI, you direct it to the masses. And as one of my friends used to say, the masses are asses. And as the group of people expands, they can't help themselves to weigh in and say something either really, really unfortunate or defend something that shouldn't be defended. It just devolves into something ridiculous. So wish people would just grow up a little bit and maybe go right directly to the source and just say, "Hey, what you thought meant goodbye actually meant something else. And is there any way we could change that moving forward?" I think PPAI, in fact, I know PPAI would welcome that type of feedback because you know what? They're not perfect. Nobody is. But when you air it in an open environment where people start piling on, it does make the people who are really trying to be thoughtful and intentional not feel so great. And then the last thing I said, the other was last thing. Everybody always wants to move it. Look, I don't like Vegas any more than anybody else. It's stupid expensive. It's Vegas. It's just Vegas. There's nowhere else to move it. It's the perfect place for it. And as much as I don't love the city. I don't love a lot of things about it. It really is the perfect place because we're all confined into that a Mandalay Bay complex for the most part. And there are people who choose to stay off the strip and so on and so forth, or higher up on the strip. But the fact that we're all confined in one area, I think actually enhances the overall experience. I'm old enough to have gone to the last PPAI Expo in Dallas, and there were people all over downtown Dallas. So there wasn't that communal experience. And I think that has truly enhanced PPI Expo. So overall, my expo was great. It's great seeing people, some outstanding conversations, tremendous time with people. I'd love to hear about your expo. What was it like? What didn't you like? And what would you improve on? So before we bring in our first guest, I'd like to do our final sponsor read for the day. And hey, do you know what season it is? A lot of you would think it's winter. It's cold here. It was like 0 when I woke up today, but it is winter. But you know what? It's not the season I'm talking about. I'm talking about business valuation season. Now, perhaps you don't know what your company's worth. Maybe it's been more than a few years since your last valuation and you need to set a new benchmark to see if your company is increasing in value. Heck, you might want to even see if it's time to sell your business. Regardless of the reason, Jamie Watson and the experts at Certified Marketing Consultants have extensive experience in the world of brand and merchandise, and they have the theoretical knowledge necessary to provide a fact-based valuation of your business. Simply shoot them an email at info@certifiedmarketing.com for a confidential discussion today. All right, thanks for rolling with me. Let's bring in our first guest. Actually, our only guest, but let's bring him in. So today's guest really needs no introduction, but as custom, I'm going to waste some of your time and introduce him anyway. Since late 2021, my guest has overseen the rapid growth of PPAI Media, which now encompasses digital content, publications, research, and public affairs efforts. A journalist since the age of 15, he first worked in sports, reporting for DallasCowboys.com before transitioning to business media. Now, prior to PPAI, he served as the editor-in-chief of Success Magazine. Please welcome the one and only, the publisher and editor-in-chief of PPAI Media, Josh Ellis. Josh, fresh off of PPAI Expo, the Super Bowl, the promotional products industry. How the hell are you?
Well, thank you for the introduction, Bill. That was long-winded. I'm doing well. I'm recovered, put my feet up over the weekend, and ready to rumble here. It's episode 2. The pilot with Nick was great, but this is where the struggle begins, and so
Uh,
I hope I don't let you down too much.
no, you won't let me down as much as our listening audience. And the introduction was long-winded because it's what you wrote and provided to me. Let's be very clear about that. So I did not add any wind to the windedness. Okay, that's enough of that. I bet you brought some topics for us to discuss, Josh, and frankly, I'm champing at the bit. What do you got?
Okay, so I'm going to start with a little story.
Excellent.
As you know, a couple times within the last 5 years, I have experienced with some amount of help from my wife, the miracle of childbirth.
Hmm.
I now have two small children. They're almost 5, almost 3, and they just experienced Christmas. And for the
Hmm.
first time, uh, a beloved aunt, um, or aunt, if you prefer. I know you're fairly proper, Bill.
That's what happens when you're raised in Plano, Texas.
Hence the champing. This beloved aunt procured for them, uh, by way of Santa, maybe a gift card,
Okay.
their very own gift cards. They each had
Hmm.
$40 to go spend on whatever they wanted at Target.
Okay.
Uh, and they're too young for that. They don't know what a dollar is or anything like that. So it was a terrible experience. There was crying, there was throwing things, there was sitting down in the aisles. What they settled on, now they're both into playing doll house. They have a little doll house. And the toys, they also got some candy, obviously. But the toys that they settled on were uh, some accoutrement for their dollhouse. And it is from a toy maker called Zuru Toys that makes a line of toys called mini brands, where you can get, and I'm looking at some of them now, not just a can of soup, but a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup, and not just a little jar of toy hot sauce, but a toy jar of Tabasco hot sauce or some Pop Secret popcorn or um, any number of other real life toy Pringles, right? Tiny little toys for their dolls to enjoy. What do we make of this? Is this the kids have already started singing jingles. My eldest will sing Liberty, Liberty, Liberty. Um, is this their baby's first promotional product, or what's going on here?
I actually love this. So when I was a kid, I equate this to what we used to see in movies, right? You would see someone drinking a can of cola as opposed to actual Coke. And even when I was a kid, that distracted me that it wasn't a real product, it was a fake product. So I think the fact that there's obviously licensing going on with the good people at Frito-Lay or Tabasco or Nabisco or whatever product it is, I actually think it's great that it's more of a real experience. I think it's more of a real experience for the kids because, like I said, it used to distract me when they would be eating a bag of chips and it wasn't Lay's, but it was designed to look as close to Lay's as possible without violating some sort of copyright or some sort of brand protection. I don't know if it qualifies as a promotional product, but I do think it is their introduction into commerce. And you talked about that they don't know the value of a dollar, and I agree. Taking children anywhere with a gift card when they don't understand the value of money is really probably one of the least Christmassy things one can do as a family. Nothing will ruin a day faster than, well, honey, your gift card's $40 and the Death Star Lego set is 490. So unfortunately, we can't get that, and they don't understand. So that was a tactical error by your aunt, and actually more of a tactical error by you. Agreeing to go along. That seems like a job for your spouse. And I think that you interjected yourself where you shouldn't have.
Yeah, she usually does the target runs.
Yeah.
No, I'm full of tactical errors as a parent, not good at this, frankly. Um, I wouldn't even say I'm enjoying the challenge, but I do love them. So I was happy to procure the mini brands for them, and
Did it bother you? Did it bother you seeing that it was an actual mini can of Pringles or mini, I think you said Pop Secret popcorn? Did obviously you noticed it. It took you took notice of it, so you must have the same experience I have that at some point there was a dividing line where it was fake products and now it's real products. So what did you make of that?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember, the Fisher Price can of hot sauce or
Right.
whatever the equivalent was. Um, yeah, I was not bothered by it. It was more of a, huh, so we're doing that now. And I can see how, the immersion that you're talking about from movies, how that could even aid in, the imagination that we all want to build in our kids when they play in their dollhouse or with their Star Wars Lego set or whatever. But I think it's probably less of a new thing um, than my initial shock would suggest, because when I was a kid, all right, big Jurassic Park guy, right? Obviously, I
Well,
wanted
obviously, I
I
think that's
wanted
obvious
the
to everybody.
Mattel Jurassic Park toys. I didn't want the generic dinosaur toys, right?
Right.
Um, and going back to kids that played with Star Wars, I'm sure that your generation when Mr. Potato Head first came out, Bill, you wanted the real Mr. Potato Head. You didn't just want a russet potato with toothpicks for the legs. Um, so
Yeah,
I
well,
get it.
back in my day, and I have a feeling that this whole Bill is old theme is going to carry on through this entire life of the entire series of the podcast because I have some guests coming up who I know are going to call me a dinosaur and so on and so forth. I think there was just a point though where brands, instead of saying, I don't want to be associated with that movie because I don't know if it's going to be good or there might be off-color jokes or whatever, or I don't want to be associated with toys, somewhere along the line, they saw it as a revenue stream because they can license the product, but B, more importantly, they're planting small seeds. So I would be willing to bet that when your kids are old enough to prefer a brand of microwave popcorn, they will gravitate towards Pop Secret because it's so burned into their brain, as opposed to Orville Redenbacher's or the Kroger brand or what have you. So there's some smart marketing there, I think. It probably, on the flip side, you talked about creativity. Maybe it dulls creativity a little bit because you can't imagine what brand of popcorn this is. I don't know.
No, it definitely makes sense for the brands. Um,
Oh yeah,
the Campbell's Soup Company or whoever owns it is going to be around when these kids have some buying power that is not bestowed on them by a wife's sister. So um,
I love this topic. This is great.
I think it makes perfect sense. I have another one if you're
Sure,
interested.
I I'm always interested.
If you're not interested, we don't have to.
No, I'm interested. That was not sarcasm. You'll
You
know
sure
when
you're
I'm being
right?
sarcastic.
You sure you're interested?
I am
Um,
positive.
and this is a hypothetical one, right?
Okay.
But let's say you're new to a job, uh,
Hmm.
and it's your first week, and it's a really important week at your new job, and you're meeting everybody for the first time. What's a good way to go about personal branding and what would you try to do?
Am I allowed to call out the analogy or no? Because I think I know the analogy here.
What do you mean?
I think you're talking about the new president and CEO of PPAI, Drew Holmgreen.
Oh, well, I guess he did go through this.
He
And I
did.
think I pause your comments for a second because before I let you say anything bad, I'm contractually obligated to say that he did great. No, I really do think Drew was a big hit in his first week.
Yeah.
Obviously, people gave him some grace in knowing that it was his first week and he's not going to remember anybody's name. But I think he acquitted himself really well.
I do too. I actually, so this is going to be a little bit redundant because I did mention this in my little lead up to our section here on the podcast, but I think it bears repeating. It's got to be tough. It's tough walking into a new job in a new building and you have however many employees PPAI has that are now up, through various ranks they're reporting up to you. That's difficult enough. Then you amplify that by a factor of 463 and say, not going to be in Dallas, you're going to be in Las Vegas. Oh, by the way, there's going to be 17,000 people there who are very eager to tell you anything and everything in their opinion. Oh, also, by the way, it's kind of the Super Bowl, the promotional products industry. And so, to have that opportunity to make a first impression on such a ginormous scale would be daunting. I know if it were me, I'd be so nervous. I met Drew on Friday, Sunday during the Promotional Products Education Foundation board meeting, and he was engaged. He was inquisitive, had some great ideas, offered value. And then I saw him so many times throughout the week, and I know he was pulled in a million different directions because he was almost omnipresent. He was everywhere. He was like Visa, everywhere I wanted to be, he was there. And I think that's a testament. I can't imagine how exhausted he was mentally at the end of every night and when he got back on that plane. But I thought, for a first, I saw what I saw. I'll tell you what the thing I saw that I liked the most. When I saw him from afar and he was talking and speaking with members, whether they were suppliers, distributors, or service providers, he was engaged. He looked right in their eye. He would listen to them. And it was active listening. It wasn't just, okay, super great to meet you. He was asking questions on what do you do and how do you do it and how long you've been to the associate. I'd love to talk to you more about this. So again, time will tell on how long hopefully here a long time. I wish success on everybody. That's kind of the way I go about life. But I thought it was a great first impression. My first impression of him was really, really strong.
So bigger topic.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I think the best trait that I picked up on from his first week is just listening and asking good questions.
Yeah.
Um, Bigger topic of you and I have spent some time speaking about personal branding.
Yep.
Uh, whether you start a new job or join a new industry, um, anytime you're around a group of strangers and
Mhm.
you're making those first impressions, I think that the cliche advice is to be yourself. And that's probably the safest advice, right? But you also have an opportunity to um, define how people view you, right? Um, and when when you say be yourself, well, we all have flaws and shortcomings and weaknesses, and sometimes we're lazy and sometimes we're
Yeah,
sleepy.
don't be that part of yourself.
Right, right. Um, so I don't know. How do you approach that? How would you approach that situation?
So I can equate this back when I started at Promo Corner in 2017. I was given the reins, made president of the organization, and I was given wholesale, wide swath to really do kind of whatever I wanted in terms of making changes and doing this. And I committed to the first 30 days of doing nothing but learning and listening. That's not easy for me. I can get very opinionated very quickly. But it was an exercise in patience for me that I wanted to listen to everybody. What are they doing? What do they want to do? How are they doing it? What do they think should change? And really learning more than anything. So I actually don't like the advice of be yourself. Um, I think if you're too much yourself, especially if you're confident and established in your career, that can actually backfire on you, and it can come across as, well, this guy's or gal's a know-it-all. So I would go into any sort of role like that today, as I did when I did Pro Bono Corner, very conciliatory. I don't know anything. I want to learn from you. I have no preconceived notions about what I do want to do or what I don't want to do. And I will say that perspective served me very, very well. Again, that listening more than acting. There's nothing there. There are a few things worse than when someone comes in a leadership role, especially if they come from outside the organization. They're not elevated from within. They come from outside the organization. They start making wholesale changes the first week or first month. I think it comes across and communicates something I was never comfortable communicating, which is, hey, I value your opinion, and I do. But if I tell you I value your opinion, but don't ask you your opinion, don't care to listen to what you have to say and make changes in your department that directly impact you and your livelihood, those two don't coexist very well.
Yeah, I think that was Drew's approach. He
Yeah.
So we're enjoying him so far.
Good. Excellent. Hey, so this is the section of the podcast where I'm going to ask you what I call five easy questions. These are intentionally awkward, so I hope you enjoy the awkwardness. Josh, are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. Josh, you're a writer, or so you claim. What would the title of your first book be, and what would it be about, and how would you work me in as a character?
You don't think that my introduction that I wrote was long enough to be a book?
It was more of a short story.
So what I would write it is what the title would just be read this book, and inside the book, I would sprinkle in personal details like my social security number and date of birth and home
Smart.
address and things like that. And I would also write several chapters about you, and I would do that securely because people don't read. It's the shame of my life, and really why I was excited to join the podcast here on episode 2 is because for all well, although I've devoted my career to the written word, I'm finding it less and less valuable all the time. It's not a criticism of our industry, right? This has been my entire career is people will glance at headlines, and you might get them to read the first paragraph, but any sort of important details often get lost buried down there in paragraph 3. So it's a real challenge.
I have to agree. If there's one takeaway from Kirby and I ending a Promo Up Front podcast, and John Corrigan did a fantastic article on us, but it was very clear to us nobody read it because everybody came up to both Kirby and I and said, what are you guys doing next? And like it was in the article. Like it's clearly spelled out in the article. Even the name of this podcast was spelled out in the article. So I understand the struggle. All right. By any measure, PPAI Expo was an absolute success last week. I want the best one thing, the one best part. I want the one worst part. And then maybe something that bothered you on the promotional products page from feedback perspective.
Um, the best part were just the crowds, and the crowds mean the energy, and that's not something that you see at, um, just your average show.
Hmm.
Whether it's a regional and those folks work really hard, or some of the other larger shows in the industry, you don't get crowds like you get at Expo, and that directly translates to energy and excitement and buzz and this hum in the trade show
Hmm.
floor that keeps people going, right?
Yep.
So we, as always, we're super proud of that. That was the best part. Worst part, you know, I I'm not sure for our even exhibitors who were there a little bit longer than the distributor attendees, that you quite recognize like how always like what a long-term stay that is for staff. This is my longest yet. I think I was there 11 days, 10 nights.
Mm. Ugh.
And although the property is very, very nice, it's just a long time to be away from home, seeing the same hotel room, the same walk to the convention center. There's like a Groundhog Day of part to it, and so that just drains on you a little bit. Luckily, we had that energy and buzz to um, to keep us going, and
Yeah.
lots of caffeine.
Yeah.
Uh, on the PPP page, I don't get too worked up about it. I've had, you mentioned early in my career, I worked for the Dallas Cowboys, and so we had a comments section on our articles where people would, tell us how stupid we are, and literally, I've received death threats for daring to say things that, this running back should start over that running back and things like that. And so you learn to take criticism not with a grain of salt, because it is always coming from a place. It's a real person's opinion, and there's probably more of them that feel that way than just that one. But the people who have something good to say often don't say anything at all in that forum. So, what I would say about some of the feedback from that group is whether if there's something you didn't like about the show, or about PPAI, or whatever, suppliers wear it in that group a lot. There's a reason things are the way they are, and it's a
Yeah.
good intentioned reason. And so for
Yeah.
PPAI, it usually comes from member feedback from past years' shows, and data that we've collected and that would set our expectations and things like that. Um, and we try to evolve it from year to year to make it the best experience possible, just like you do in your own companies, right?
Yeah.
So that I it only crosses a line if it becomes personal or anything like that.
Yeah, I get frustrated with that PPP page. Shockingly, I know, because when there's real criticism, because nothing's perfect and there's always room for improvement. And I think what you touch on it, PPA is always looking to make it the best event ever, to make it better than last year, to elevate, so on and so forth. And there might be small complaints and beefs. They don't need to be aired publicly in order to build some sort of weird coalition to make yourself feel better. You get much more change in action if you emailed Josh Ellis directly, or Lindsay Davis directly, or Ellen Tucker directly, and saying, hey, I have an idea. Rather than trying to round up a posse, maybe do that directly. At least that's my opinion. I found that when I've had changes and suggestions, I get far more actual action and respect if I do it that way rather than, the Festivus airing of grievances, which we see on that page. All right, let's do a blind rank of things at PPA Expo, top 1 to 5. So you get to, I'm going to tell you the thing, you just put it. Is it number 2, number 4, number 5? All right. And these are all good things.
Number one being the best.
Number 1 being the best. All right, let's start with staff only PPAI get together after everybody leaves Expo.
And I'll adjust these as they go because I don't know
No,
what's
you will
coming
not
after.
adjust them. They are locked in. You have to
One,
lock it in.
one.
That's number 1. Okay, fair enough. The awards luncheon and dinner.
Um,
It's not as easy as it sounds, is it?
uh, four,
Okay. The trade show itself.
two.
Conference day. Education day, conference day.
Now, this is where it's going to get hard because I don't know what the next one's going to be.
You don't.
Three.
3. All right. So that would mean the PPAI closing party was the worst thing you experienced at Expo. Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Well, you got into the VIP. How am I supposed to
I
rank
don't
it
know.
any higher than that if you were in the VIP roped off area, Bill?
Sir, I don't want to be a member of any club that would be dumb enough to have me. So that's not my fault that I was in there.
Glad you agree.
All right. I've taken a lot of notice. There's a lot of Joshes in the promotional products industry. Josh Robbins from Vault Promotions, Joshua Pospisil from, he was with AIA, and I think that's I Promote You now. I think that's how they're going to market. Josh Applebaum, even Josh Story, who works at PPAI. What makes you believe you're the king of all Joshes in the industry the way you kind of promoted that last week?
Did I? Uh,
I,
um,
I don't know. I think you did. Did you?
it's always been my dream to be identified by a single name like LeBron or Cher or Bill. And so I think I'm getting closer to that. I'm a little over three
Okay.
years in, right? And I have a lot of name recognition just because I send almost everyone in the industry that email every morning. You're welcome. Click the ads. I think that those other Joshes that you mentioned, they need some exposition to explain who you're talking about, right? There's Josh Robbins, Bill Petrie's friend, or there's Josh, and usually then most people pronounce his name a couple of times before they
Yeah.
get
They
Pospisil right.
they
Josh,
they usually
Josh,
settle on popsicle.
yes. Josh Applebaum jeans, boots with the fur.
Hmm.
Um, and then we're just calling him other Josh right
Okay.
now. Josh Story doing a little work for
Okay.
PPAI. So I'm getting there, and hopefully this appearance on Between Two Brands will really cement that.
One could only hope, but I would level set your expectations. Last question. This one I'm very curious about personally. Now, you worked for the Dallas Cowboys. You know I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. I grew
Mm,
up in Dallas, so I'm a
mm.
big fan. How realistic is Jerry Jones' hairpiece, and why hasn't he given you the name of his toupee maker?
Well, it's been a long time since I worked there. Jerry was a younger man back then. He looked like a sort of a young crypt keeper from Tales from the Crypt then. I did not, in my day job, I was more worried about who the fourth wide receiver was going to be, things like that, all the death threats that I mentioned earlier. Um, I did not know it was a toupee until I was on a treadmill next to him one day on the road, and it was a little shocking. Um, and it's gotten less realistic over the years. I think, when we get older, our head shrinks a little bit, that we shrink, and the toupee does not shrink. Um, as for what happened, the theory is that he actually removed it from the scalp of a long forgotten team employee.
Okay.
So that just just that
That
if anybody wants to go down that wormhole, there it is.
I love a good conspiracy theory. Great stuff. Some really good stuff. Hey, speaking of good stuff, we've got some great stuff coming out of Bell Promo these days. Lowest minimums in the industry, deepest inventory round, 5-star and A+ service, simplified pricing. You can Bell Promo all of that. But now they have 2-day production on the vast majority of their products. And so when a client comes to you and says, "Can I get something in 2 days?" Yeah, you can Bell Promo that. So head over to bellpromo.com. You're not going to be sorry you did. Josh Ellis, thank you for being the guest here. I hope you had a good time. I had a great time. It's always good to see you, and I appreciate your toupee talk.
I sure was nice to be here, Bill. Thanks for the invite.